Have your neighbors ever called the cops on you for something ridiculous? 1. My husband and I had just come home from my birthday dinner. He'd gone outside to get rid of some false widow spiders in our garden so the kids wouldn't get bitten by them. I was heading upstairs to bed when I heard banging on the front door. I opened it to see 6 police officers standing in front of me, with 4 more in their cars. I was scared and had no idea what was going on. One officer asked me, "Miss, are you in the house alone?" I replied, "No." "Who else is in the house with you?" "My in-laws and my husband." "Where is your husband, miss?" "Outside in the garden, killing spiders." "May I ask why?" The officer looked at me and said he needed to go outside to talk to him. I showed them the way. They all went outside to investigate and then came back in. "We are sorry to disturb you this evening, but someone called in saying they believed somebody was being murdered. They claimed they saw a flashlight in the back and heard somebody shouting, 'Die! Die! Die!' They looked around the garden and the house, then went outside and stayed for about 30 minutes. Still, it's the best birthday I've ever had to this day. 2. We had a Karen in our neighborhood years ago whose favorite pastime seemed to be walking past my house while I was doing yard work and telling me that whatever I was doing was wrong. She was a real pain in the ass. One day, I was weeding along the curb, and here comes Karen. She said something obnoxious, and out of nowhere, Graphene, my 100-pound German Shepherd, sprang from the front porch and trotted down the front yard, eyeing Karen menacingly. She stopped at the edge of the property, as she was well trained and respected the boundaries I'd set for her, and stood there growling. Karen screamed and backed away, flailing her arms and making such a ridiculous commotion that even Graphene tilted her head in confusion. "You need to have that dog on a leash," she wailed as she scampered away. 10 minutes later, a police car rolled up. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," I thought. The cop got out of the car, and I walked over to him. "Hi. I'm pretty sure I know why you're here." "Yeah," he said. "We got a call about a near dog attack or maybe just a menacing dog." He looked over at Graphene, who was lounging on the grass nearby. I relayed what had happened, explaining that she gave the woman a scare but had never left the property. The cop chuckled and turned to Graphene, who rose and walked toward us. She approached him tentatively, but when he extended his hand, she melted. He pet her vigorously as she lay down on her back, offering a belly rub. The cop told me about the German Shepherds his family had raised over the years and how great they are as companions. We chatted for a good 10 minutes, and part of that time was spent tossing a tennis ball Graphene had brought him. The best part? I knew Karen, 2 houses away, was watching the whole scene from her window. She probably thought the cop was going to issue me a summons or impound the dog, but instead, we were chatting like old friends while he tossed tennis balls to Graphene. That must have enraged her. 3. When I first bought my house in 1997, there was an older woman living next door. She had wanted my 2/3 acre lot to expand her yard and planned to tear down the house. One day, while cleaning brush out of my yard, the cops showed up, asking what I was doing on private property. I told them I was the new property owner and showed them my sales contract. "No problem." Then I moved my old car into the yard and covered it with a tarp. A few days later, I found a 5-day tow ticket on it for being an abandoned vehicle on an empty lot. I took my title deed and ID to the police station. Turns out, she had called them after watching me leave, thinking they'd tow it immediately. Over time, she made several complaints: indecent exposure, because I was working in my yard in a bathing suit top, water from my gutter splashing on her sidewalk, leaves blowing onto her laundry, and dust from my yard getting on her grass. I put up a 7-foot privacy fence, but she still called the cops, claiming I was walking around my yard nude. When the officers asked how she'd seen me over the fence, she admitted she had climbed onto a chair to look. The cops finally told her that if she called them one more time about me minding my own business, they'd charge her with violating my right to peaceful enjoyment of my property. The old bat eventually moved away. 4. It was the summer of 2008. I was asleep late in the morning when I heard insistent knocking at the door. I opened it to find 2 police cars outside and 2 officers asking if I knew a Brad, my daughter's 18-year-old boyfriend. I said I did, and they told me he was in the front yard looking scared to death. I invited him in, but the police were hesitant. Turns out, a neighbor had called the police about Brad sitting in our backyard, assuming he was trespassing. My daughter, who had the flu, had told Brad to wait outside until she got up and hadn't told me. Brad, who'd been stopped by police before, was biracial, and in our neighborhood, that was apparently enough for someone to call the cops.